Are you able to hear me?
Yes, madam. आमचा आवाज तिकडे जात नाही आणि चॅट मधनं पण डिसेबल केलं त्यामुळे आम्हाला चॅट पण करता येत नाही. आता इथं चॅट यू आर नो लॉंगर अ पार्टिसिपंट म्हणून खाली मिळते. त्यामुळे परवा दिवशीच्या लेक्चर मध्ये कोणीतरी रिमूव्ह केलं डायरेक्ट आणि त्याच्यानंतर असं आहे की मग खाली येतं यू आर नो लॉंगर पार्टिसिपंट आणि तुम्ही बघाल हे परवा दिवशीचे मेसेज आहे, काल कोणाचा चॅट नाही, कोण मेसेज पण टाकू शकत नाही, आवाजही इकडे येत नाही.
हमको एक दूसरे की आवाज सुनाई दे रही है, बट मुझे लग रहा है आप बोल रहे वो हमको सुनाई दे रहा है, टीचर को सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है शायद. Ma'am, we could not hear you.
फायनल एक पूर्ण नाही. काय टाकलं? चॅटिंग मध्ये गेलं
Hello? You are able to hear me, sir? No.
हॅलो.
Hello? Are you able to hear me?
त्यांचा आवाज येतो स्पीकरवर. त्यांचा आवाज येतो पण त्यांचा आवाज जातो.
Hello?
But no one can respond.
I can check. Hi, Sultana. Whether you are able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
उसका आवाज मुझे आ रहा है, आपको नहीं आ रहा. Yes.
indirect taxes and customs. So we will start with today's session, and going forward we will start timely like 8:30, 6:30 till 8:30. So today, tomorrow will be indirect tax classes. So now you are able to hear who are in online. Yes. So we will focus and target, like you can able to see the syllabus, like what are the topics for our final paper. So like if I take like first one, supply under GST, time of supply or the place of supply valuation, we will target to complete in the same class only, because if we move to the next class, that gap will be there and we may tend to forget some of the clauses or the some of the rules and the sections. So we will focus this time, like suppose if tomorrow we will focus on the time of supply. So the time of supply we will finish it in the same class itself. And suppose if it is place of supply, and that same session only we will complete it, because we will have to do multiple previous year tax paper, that is previous year question papers. So that will give you good idea where to focus and on what area, and what are the theory parts which we need to cover, and in from the customs part, which part we needed to focus more. Because even if we see the customs area, like customs procedures, baggage, there is definitely questions from the baggage which are very easy one. And like the export promotion schemes and the special economic zone schemes, there are definitely the questions from these main areas. So where we can focus more and score good marks, that we need to do lot of previous year question papers. And like suppose if we are only when we complete our syllabus only, we could able to take the previous year's question papers. So now we will move on to our first one, that is supply under GST. So these are the very basics one. Just for refresh purpose, we will have a look into supply under GST first. If I don't speak in mic, those who are in online, they will not able to hear, sir. On mic, only on mic. If I switch on, I switch on mic. If I speak, voice is very low. So suppose somewhere if not clear, please stop me, so we can discuss and then we can continue also. So these we might have seen in our um, intermediate also. Just today being the first class, we will just refresh what we have gone through in intermediate. Then we will go in depth into all topics. So first one is ours is supply under GST. So in supply under GST, we'll be seeing what are the taxable, what is meant by taxable event. So what the section 7 1A says. One second. So then what is meant by the transaction value, what is meant by the composite and the mixed supplies. So like in accounting, where we have the three golden rules like personal, real and nominal, in GST also we have this very important section, which is section 7. Under this we have schedules, like what is mean by schedule 1, schedule 2 and schedule 3. So when we go into the next the subsequent chapters, the same sections only we may need to interpret, even whether it is a time of supply, place of supply or ITC, whatever it is, we will be interpreting the same section only. And we need to identify whether it is CGST, CGST, SGST tax is applicable, whether it is IGST tax is applicable. So wherever in the subsequent chapters, if we move these sections only, we should be thorough in these topics only. So only then we will be able to interpret. So now we'll just see the taxable event. That screen is not visible in online. Okay. So actually, students, I'm actually sharing my screen, but whether you are all able to see my screen? If I move, I am actually moving my screen. You are able to see which page actually? Okay. I think it got stuck. I am in page taxable event. Oh, I don't know what issue is there. So online, those who are there like Sultana or Rajaram, whether you are able to see my screen, I am in the page taxable event, but I am not sure which slide you are able to see.
No, ma'am.
Whether you are there are mics,
Another
I am
page
not
it
able
is.
to hear also. Your name, sir? Oh, I am asking. Your name? Okay. Okay, fine. Actually, I am in the topic. Even here also, I am not able to support it. I am in different page, and this one is in different page. the very preliminary thing is we need to identify what is the transaction, whether that is taxable under GST law. So if it is taxable under GST law, whether it is a supply of goods or services or both, that we need to identify. So what is the meaning of the taxable event is, supply of goods or services, supply of anything other than goods or services does not attract GST. Then supply, it should be made for a consideration. Supply should be made in the course or furtherance of business, and it should be made by a taxable person. It should be a taxable supply, and it should be within the taxable territory. So if these 6 conditions are satisfied, then our transaction can be treated as a taxable event. This is the very basic, this is today I'm in this page, because we needed to just refresh what we have done in the previously, and so that we will have a good pickup from the other chapters. So first one is the taxable event. So which one we consider as a taxable event? So under what conditions the transaction is considered as a taxable event? So there are 6 points are there. So under these criteria, we treat the transaction as a taxable event. There is some exceptional cases are there. So what is that exception? So under which conditions we will not treat the transaction as not a supply? So now this is theory only. We will see with along with the examples. So it will give a good idea about the taxable events. So what are the exceptional cases here? Any transaction involving supply of goods or services without consideration is not a supply. So suppose if I am buying some parts without any consideration, then that transaction is not treated as a supply. But in brief, we will be studying in the consideration. So what do you mean by consideration? Under what circumstances, if there is no consideration but still we will be treating as a supply? And the second one is the import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. And very important thing here is, wherever if you see or in the law paper also, there is a word like in the course of business, furtherance of business. So we should understand what is meant by in the course of business and what is meant by furtherance of business. So that will really help us to understand what that transaction means. So we will see with examples, and we'll come back to this section 7.1. I'll see with any examples, because we know it that continuously if we go into the theory part also, it will we will not be able to focus for a long time. So we will see with the examples. Just now we have seen what is meant by in the course of business, in the furtherance of business. So what is the difference between in the course or the furtherance of business? So what is meant by in the course of business? So every person carries out certain activities regularly for running trade or commerce. So what does it mean? Every person who carries out certain activities regularly for running trade or commerce. So there is an example that CMA Mr. Ram, a practicing cost accountant, carries out the activity of accounting, auditing, filing returns, certifying documents and so on. These activities considered as performed in the course of business. So when he does the activity in the course of continuously, like he is carrying out, he does accounting. So when the auditing time, that is the once the financial year is over, the auditing he does, then he goes for filing the returns, and any documents needs to be submitted to the department. So if we want to take approval from any CMAs, so he certifies some documents also, that we call it as these activities are called it is in the course of business. So what difference it makes in the course of business, furtherance of business. So what is mean by furtherance of business? Every business person uses to think how to develop his business or carrying out new activities. So today suppose if I am taking lecture here, and tomorrow if I want to start my own new firm, then that will be in the furtherance of business. So every business person uses to think how to develop his business or carrying out new activities. So such activities called as furtherance of business. So here also there is an example, like X Limited, manufacturing of motor cars. Company used to sell a greater number of cars in southern India. In view of demand in southern India, company intends to establish manufacturing unit in Chennai. X Limited appointed Mr. Y as a consultant for searching, evaluating and shortlisting the places for prospective targets. Finally, company decided to establish unit at Ambattur Industrial Estate, Chennai. Mr. Y carried out various activities is in furtherance of business of Mrs. X Limited. So what Mr. Y is carrying out the activities, he was searching where we can place that project, where we can start. So he was searching for the place, evaluate, and he identified some 2-3 places, and finally he concluded to start the business at Ambattur Industrial Estate, Chennai. So that type of transaction we call it as in furtherance of business. GST is essentially a tax only on commercial transactions. So it is the same only below. So we because we have in the MCQ type of questions, so which transaction we call it as in the course of business, or whether it can be treated as in the course or in furtherance of business. So to identify that, we have seen these examples. Now we will go back to our rules, which is section 7(1) subsection. So section 7 is the scope of supply. So this entire first chapter is about this scope of supply only. So what does section 7 says? So under section 7 you can see subsection 1 section 7, subsection 2 section 7, and there is subsection 3 also section 7. There are 3 are there. So the first one is all subsection 1 of section 7. So there what supply includes. So it tells about what does mean by supply includes what? Subsection 1, section 7. So what do you mean by first one? We will see what is mean by the supply, what supply includes. So all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal, made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. So there under section 7 we have subsection 1, section 7. So under that we have subsection like A, B, C. So we have three sections like subsection 7. Under section 7 we have subsection 1, 2 and 3. So under subsection 1 we have this classification. The first one is all forms of supply of goods or services or both. So sale means sale, that is transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, disposal. These all we treat it as a supply. That means to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. That's why we have seen what does mean by in the course or furtherance of business. So we have multiple illustrations against this. So we will see few illustrations. So it will give a better idea about the sale, sale, transfer, everything. So we will see what do you mean, what is mean by sale. Sale means we will see with the examples. Mr. X sold laptop 1 lakh rupees and issued invoice in favor of Mr. Y. Now ownership in laptop, it is transferred to Mr. Y. So this transaction we call it as a sale. It is supply of goods and it is the GST is applicable here. So here when we say about sales, this we might have seen in our law paper also what does mean by sale. So when the ownership is transferred to the other person, then that type of transactions we call it as sale. So here only I have seen that I'm reading that example like we know it, sale means once the ownership transferred to the other person, again once and against the consideration is paid, we call it as a sale. So here Mr. Y sold the laptop to Mr. X sold the laptop to Mr. Y and the ownership is transferred to Mr. Y. So we call that transaction as a supply of goods and the GST is applicable. So there is a very important point here. If it is for the mortgage, hypothecation, charge or pledge, then that is not treated as a supply, and for those transactions GST will not be levied. So they actually why I am repeating this particular point because in the when we go into the MCQ types, these questions are being asked like what are the below they have given the multiple choices which are not considered as a not a supply and the GST will not be levied. So like if we mortgage our goods, if we hypothecate or if we send it for a charge or it is for a pledge, transaction we call it as an illegal and which transaction we call it as a prohibited. So if it, what is illegal? So thief has stolen a motorbike and sells it to Mr. Q. So suppose if a thief stolen and if he sold that motorbike, then it will be called treated as an illegal, and the sale this is considered as a sale of motorbike considered as supply and the tax is applicable. So the act, the section says, if a person, the thief has stolen a motorbike and if he sold that motorbike also, it is an illegal only, but still against that supply GST, that tax is applicable only. And the second case is prohibited. So when the transaction called it as a prohibited. So Mr. T sold drugs and psychotropic substances to Q for 3 lakhs. So he sold it for 3 lakhs, but still it will not be treated as a supply. Why? Because drugs are prohibited activity and it is punishable under law. So now till now we have seen 4 things, like what is meant by a taxable event. So there are 6 conditions. So those, if the transaction is completing all the 6 criteria or the 6 conditions, then we call it as a taxable event. Then we have seen what is meant by in the course of business or furtherance of business. We should be able to identify what is meant by in the course and in the furtherance of business. The next one we have seen what is the under section 7, what section 7 means what. So section 7 we have 3 subsections, that is subsection 1, subsection 2 and subsection 3. So what is subsection 1 says and what is we have not gone into 2 and 3. Under subsection 1 we have section A is there. So under A we have seen what is a sale. So under sale only we have seen with an example and we saw what is prohibited activity and what is meant by illegal activity. So if the transaction is an illegal activity, the GST is applicable, and if the transaction is a prohibited activity, then it is punishable under law. So these we need to identify from the transaction, and we have to come, and if tomorrow in our exams if they ask like that person sold the drugs to Mr. B for 3 lakhs, then in that case we should be able to mention if it is an illegal activity GST is applicable. For the prohibited activity it is punishable under law, that it will not be treated as a supply itself. So next we will see about we have seen what is a sale, next is a transfer, next one is a barter, and then exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal. These many are covered under subsection A. So now we have seen about A. The next we will see transfer. So what in the basic law as a layman language, what is mean by a transfer? Where the ownership may not be transferred, but the right in the goods is transferred. So first one we have seen about the sale, that is sale. So in sale we have seen the ownership is transferred from one person to other person. But in case of transfer, the ownership may not be transferred, but the right in the goods is transferred. So we will see with example here. Mr. A is the owner of Xerox machine, he transferred the right to operate the Xerox machine to Mr. B. So now he gave the right to operate only. He did not sold that Xerox machine to Mr. B. He just transferred only right to operate. So for what consideration? For 10,000 rupees per month, and it is for 4 months. The ownership is not transferred, but the right in the machine is transferred. So here the transfer definition we have seen. So transfer means what? The ownership may not be transferred, but the right is transferred. The same here. So the ownership is not transferred, but the right in the machine is transferred. It is supply of service, and the GST is applicable here. So whenever we see the transaction, we conclude that this is a supply, then tax is applicable. If we see something and identified and this is not a supply, then tax is not applicable for those transactions. So in the same previous case, like prohibited activity. Prohibited activity, if you see, we have concluded that this is not a supply. So the tax is not applicable for those transactions. So next one is the barter. So barter means, first we will see the meaning. The exchange of goods and productive services for other goods and productive services without the use of money. So exchange of goods and services for other, basically it is like we know it previously also, it is the exchange of goods and services. So in that case, whether we can call that barter as a supply. So we have a good example here. See, a practicing cost accountant, he provided services to XYZ Limited. He is a dealer of laptops. So if, for example, if I am providing my service to a dealer who is a XYZ Limited, in turn XYZ Limited given to Mr. C 2 laptops. So I am not charging any fees from the dealer. Instead, I am getting 2 laptops. Here two-way supply takes place. Mr. C is making taxable supply of service, and XYZ is making taxable supply of goods. So hence tax is payable by both. So even if I am rendering service to a dealer, and the dealer I am not taking any consideration. My consideration is how? By laptop only. So I am taking 2 laptops and instead of money, but still the section says GST is applicable. The transaction should be treated as a supply and the GST is applicable. So that is why we should able to understand. So suppose we may have an idea like, if we instead of taking a money from the dealer, if I am taking by way of laptop, we may have some idea like we don't want to pay the GST, but still the section says the transaction is a supply and we have to pay GST against that supply. So we have seen now out of the sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal, we have seen what is mean by sale, what is mean by transfer, and what is mean by barter. So under barter also we have concluded, though there is an exchange of goods or services against instead of consideration, still the transaction to be treated as a supply and GST is applicable. So now we will see what is meant by exchange. So what do you mean by exchange? When two persons mutually transfer the ownership of one thing for the ownership of another, neither thing nor both things being money only, the transaction is called exchange. That meaning we'll see along with the example that Mr. A is a dealer of new phones. So he is a dealer of new phones. He supplied 20,000 to Mr. B along with the exchange of an old phone. So we have to see this exchange carefully because we are exchanging our old phone and purchasing a new phone. So if the phone original cost is 24,000 and we are exchanging our mobile, so my old phone, if he is taking the shop is taking that it for 4,000. So I am paying only 20,000 to the supplier instead of 24,000 because I have already sold my old phone and he has taken it for 4,000 rupees. So now I am paying only 20,000. So we should able to identify whether he has to pay GST for 24,000 or 20,000 here. So that in case of exchange, how we have to pay, on what amount GST is applicable. So Mr. A is a dealer of new phones. He supplied 20,000 to Mr. B along with the exchange of an old phone. And if the price of new phone without exchange, it is 24,000. See, if you see here that open market value, even we have our one topic, valuation of supply. So actually the scope of supply, if you see, it is the very basic for our subsequent chapters. So very important here. So we have our fourth chapter, which is valuation. So valuation, again this same point will be there, like whether you will be how you will value the products, on what value we have to pay the GST. So that very basic one is we will be seeing in the valuation. The same thing you are seeing here now. So what is mean by exchange? On what value the supplier has to pay the GST. So is he going to pay on 20,000? No. It is he has to pay GST on the open market value. So what is the open market value of the new phone? The open market value is 24,000. So he is liable to pay tax on 24,000 and not on 20,000. So each and every line here which you are seeing is very important. That's why I am repeating. This same point only you will be seeing in our valuation of supply. So even our fourth chapter is valuation. So there are problems like same type of transactions. So which number we will be taking for the calculation of either CGST, SGST or IGST. There we will be in a position like which number, either it is 20,000 or 24,000. So please be strong in our basics itself. Like we have in the exchange, though it is an exchange and though we are paying only 20,000 instead of 24, the supplier has to pay GST on 24,000. So this is for the exchange related. Then license. So what is mean by license? Where one person grants to another or to a definite number of other persons a right to do or continue to do, or upon the immovable property or immovable property of the grantor, the right is called a license. So we'll see with example the meaning of license. Mr. X, a developer of information technology software and holder of license. License to use software was given to different clients for 18 lakhs. Mr. X is liable to pay GST whether he transfer such right permanently or temporarily, but still he is liable to pay. That is the for license means what? Though he transfers the entire right, whether it is for permanent or for temporary purpose, but still he is liable to pay GST on the entire 18 lakhs. One more example also there, like a Chennai based company awarded mineral exploration contract for 18 months in respect of specific sites in Mumbai. As a result, Chennai based company got license to extract mineral exploration for a period of 18 months. Mumbai based company supplied taxable services and the GST is liable to pay by Chennai based company on license fee paid to supplier under reverse charge. So here we might have already seen also that reverse charge is there. So we should understand what is the meaning of RCM also. So these all new terms are there in our scope of supply. So what is mean by RCM? So RCM means what? If I am a supplier, I am not going to pay the GST. The buyer who buys from me, he will be paying the GST. So that is the reverse charge. So usually who pays the GST? Who supplies the goods, they pay the GST to the department. Under reverse charge, who buys from me, they will be paying the GST to the department. That is the under reverse charge. So then we have rentals. So whether rent is treated as a supply or not, we'll see here. Periodical payment for use of another's property, rent is to pay on monthly. So whether rent is a supply or not, we have to identify here. Mr. A owns a residential building in a prime commercial locality. Large vacant land in the backyard is given on rent rupees 1,80,000 per month to a parking contractor. Mr. B, who has set up a parking facility on the said land, it is a taxable supply of service and A is liable to pay GST. So what in short, in the example it is given, Mr. A, suppose if I own a residential building and I have a large vacant land near my residential building. So I have given that vacant land for a rent which is for 1,80,000, and B who has set up a parking facility and he used that he is using that vacant land which I let out on rent and it is for 1,80,000. Whether that transaction to be treated as a supply. So currently you please understand whether it is a supply. So later we have to bifurcate whether it is a supply of goods or supply of service. So right now that vacant land which has been let out for rent, it is treated as a supply and the GST is applicable. So even if you are renting out any property, then GST it is to be considered as a supply and the GST is applicable here. So next one example is there, like Mr. X, the owner of residential building in a commercial locality. Ground floor is given on rent Mr. C for a monthly rent 60,000. Mr. Y uses the same as his residence. Then in that case it is treated as a supply of service specific and it is exempted from GST. Okay. So please have a look on the previous example number 14 and example number 15. So example number 14, if you see, it is the commercial purpose, and below if you see that Mr. Y uses ground floor for his residential purpose. So you should identify if it is for commercial purpose, then the GST is applicable, and if it is for the residence purpose, it is exempted from GST and the X is not liable to pay GST here. Again I am repeating the same we will be seeing in our valuation also. Now itself if you able to bifurcate which one to be treated as a taxable supply, then easy for us to quickly have a look on our valuation topic as well. So now we have seen about sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease. So we are into now lease, and the last one is the disposal. So lease is what? It is an agreement the lessor conveys to the lessee in return for a payment of payment or series of payments, right to use an asset for an agreed period of time. So lease may be either financial or the operating lease. So in the lease case, we should know whether it is a taxable event, whether the GST is applicable if you are letting out any of your property for lease. So Mr. X Bank Limited given an asset under financial lease. Y Limited repayment of financial lease made by the customer to the bank 80 lakhs, which includes the principal amount of 50 lakhs. In that case, still financial lease shall be taxed as an supply of services. X Bank Limited is liable to pay the GST here. So even if you are letting any of your property for the lease, still the GST is applicable. And the last one is the disposal. So what is the meaning of disposal? So disposal, it is selling of assets which organization is about to close down, and various assets required to be disposed of. So it's like a winding up of the company. So if there is any winding up is happened and all the assets are disposed, in that case the transaction will be considered as a supply and it is liable to GST. So all these points are very important here. The same, if we want to quickly complete our valuation under GST, so these are the basics like sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or these only will be there with along with like in depth we will be going, and we needed to identify whether we should have to consider as a taxable supply, or whether it needs to be considered as an interstate or yeah, intrastate. Those are from these basics only. In previous class also you have the same issues. At least this screen should be on off, should not be there. So whether you were able to follow me, sir, what I am trying to explain actually, huh? Because I am not fluent in Hindi, so I could able to explain in Hindi. But till the time we move on to the problems, because even if you want to apply the problems, so we needed to have this basics. Otherwise, there we will have an issue whether we needed to identify whether the supply is a taxable supply or not, whether the transaction is an inter or intrastate. That problem will be there. So once our basics is clear, then it will be easy and it will be time or less time consuming to complete our problems also. So these are for the section 7 subsection 1 subsection A. So next is subsection AA is there. So what is subsection AA? The activities or transactions by a person other than an individual to its members or constituents for cash, deferred payment, or other valuable consideration. So this transaction we needed to identify whether this supply is also a taxable or whether it is a taxable event or not. So section 7 1 subsection 1 subsection AA, that is, we have an example. A club has opened up a shop. The members can purchase various goods from such shops. So the club has opened the shop and the members can purchase, then it is treated as a supply of goods. That is, the activities by a person other than individual. So to its members, in that case also it is treated as a supply of goods. The other transaction is a local association. So if for meeting purpose, if they are supplying tea, snacks to its members, but and still it is treated as a supply of goods. So I think now we will see with we'll go to the schedule 1, which is interesting one and very important also. There is subsection B is also there, and C we will see it now, which is activities in schedule 1 made or agreed to be made without a consideration. So we know it, the consideration. So what does mean by consideration? So whenever we purchase any goods or any parts or anything from the shop, we make a payment. So that is called a consideration. Suppose if I am selling my iPhone to someone, if I am getting a money, so that money is a consideration. So what section schedule 1 says, activities to be treated as supply even if made without consideration. So some of the activities, suppose if I am selling it but still I am not taking any consideration, but still those transactions to be treated as a supply even though we don't take any consideration. So there are 4 very important points are there. One is permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, where ITC has been availed on such assets. Suppose if Mr. X is having his own company and he has been running his business, for example, for the last 10 years, and he purchased some of the assets for his business, and when he purchased those assets, he has availed the ITC. Now today he wants to dispose of all his assets. So in that case, we have to see like permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where ITC has been availed. Though no consideration, it should be treated as a supply. So the very first point is what? Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. So I am moving on to the page where we have the illustration. So there are actually our syllabus covers all those transactions. So if we are covering everything, we will be able to score good marks. So now the first one is what we have seen: permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. So what I said, suppose if the Mr. X has started his business 10 years before, when he started his business, he purchased the asset and he has availed the ITC. So now what it says, we have an example. Mr. X Limited upgrades the computer system. The existing computers and laptops which do not support the upgraded version, and he donated that to a trust. This amounts to permanent transfer of business assets. The same will be treated as a supply of goods and liable to GST, provided, so that is very important, provided if company availed ITC on such computers and laptops. So I have purchased my laptop 10 years before and I am trying to upload some software in my system, but because of the version issue, I am not able to update the software in my laptop. So I wanted to dispose this laptop and I wanted to purchase a new one. So if I am going to dispose where I am going to donate this laptop, I am donating it to some trust. So I am permanently disposing my laptop now. In that case, when I purchased it, the laptop some 10 years back and availed the input tax credit, in that case, even if I am disposing for without any consideration, I am donating this laptop to some trust, but still GST is applicable. Why? When I purchased this machine, I have availed the input tax credit. So you can compare the same with some MNCs also. Like if a company purchased some 100 number of laptops for employees, and they moved to some different software where they want to update the version in all those 100 laptops, and the system is not accepting the version. They wanted to donate those 100 laptops to some trust. So in that case, if when they purchased that time, if they have availed the ITC, today if they want to donate the same to the trust, even though the company is not going to get even single rupee, still they are they have to pay the GST, because the transaction is considered as a supply and they have to pay the GST. So this is the very first point which the act, the schedule 1 says. Thus activities to be treated as supply even if made without consideration, meaning permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where ITC has been availed on such assets. So even though I am not going to earn a single rupee when I transfer, but still I have to pay the GST on those assets. So we'll move on to the next point. Supply of goods or services or both between related persons or between distinct persons as specified in section 25 when made in the course or furtherance of business, provided gifts not exceeding 50,000 rupees in value in a financial year by an employer to an employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services or both. So second point, supply between related persons or distinct persons. Here we have definition for the related persons. So related means what? Section 15 deemed to be a related. Related means persons or officers or directors of one another's businesses. Such persons are legally recognized partners, persons are employee and employee. Any person directly or indirectly owns, controls or holds 25% or more. One of them directly or indirectly controls the other, both of them directly or indirectly. So we have a definition for the related persons and distinct persons. So there are questions has been asked previously, like explain or define the related persons, define distinct persons. So we should be able to identify and whether that transactions are treated as a supply or not. I think this example will give you some clear idea about what is the second in schedule 1, what that sections 2 says, that is supply of goods or services or both between related persons or between distinct persons. So any person directly or indirectly owns, controls or holds 25% or more of the outstanding voting stock or shares of both of them. So here Mrs. Ram and Co holds 30,000 shares in X Limited and 25,000 shares in Y Limited. Share capital of X Limited 1 lakh equity shares of 10 rupees and share capital of Y Limited is 80,000 equity shares of rupees 10 each. Now how much he holds? He holds more than 25% of the share in the company of X and Y. Then they will be as a related person. Actually here the example is at what condition you will be treating as a related person. So if we are able to identify that more than 25% holder that Ram and Co holds a share in the X and Y, then it will be treated as a related persons. I'm not going into much. We'll be having separately like a related person and distinct persons separately. So I will show you if anything related to that gift is there, that gifts not exceeding 50,000 in a financial year. Yes. Yes, it is applicable. So we'll see here the Sundaram and Co. Sundaram and Co engages Honda Cars as an agent to sell. I think this is for the third one. Okay. We'll see that third point here, supply of goods by a principal to his agent, where the agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal, or agent to his principal, where the agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of the principal. So it is like a principal agent transaction. So where there is a transaction between the principal or to his agent, still there will not be any consideration, but still the GST is applicable here. So here is an example for the same, like Sundaram and Co engages Honda Cars Limited as an agent to sell cars on its behalf. Honda Cars Limited has supplied 50 cars to the showroom of Sundaram and Co, which is located in Chennai. Supply of cars by Honda Cars to Sundaram and Co will qualify as supply, and the same is leviable to GST. So even though it is a supply from the to the showroom of Sundaram and Co only, that is they have engaged with an agent. Sundaram and Co engages Honda Cars Limited as an agent. So though there is a transaction as a principal and agent, still it will be treated as a supply and the GST is applicable in this case. So next another one is very clear here, like Mrs. M Limited, a garment manufacturer, appoints Ram as an agent who stores garments manufactured by M Limited and sends to dealers whenever M Limited ask Mr. Ram to do so? Is it a supply? So even though there is a that Ram is an agent, he just stores the garments. It's like a warehouse, but he's just stores the garment. But still, the transfer of garments from M Limited to Mr. Ram, that time it will be treated as a taxable supply under GST. So the third point here is that's schedule says that with the transaction between the principal and the agent, though the transaction is we don't get any consideration out of it, but still the transaction is treated as a supply and the GST is applicable. Then the last schedule 1, that is import of services by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishments outside India in the course or furtherance of business. So the last one is very important, because wherever if you see, the questions are like import of services only. So when we do the import of services, person from a related person or from any of his other establishments outside India in the course or furtherance of business, though we don't have any consideration, still whether it will be treated as a supply or not, we have to check now. Import of services by a person from a related person or from his establishments located outside India in the course or furtherance of business, it will be treated as a supply. So like Opte and Opte Limited, which is located in India and holding 51% of shares of Wilson Limited, a USA based company. Wilson Limited provides business auxiliary services. So that for this transaction also it will be treated as a supply, because we are importing the services and he holds the 51% of shares. So it will be treated as a supply, and the tax, whenever we say it is treated as a supply, then we should know it that GST is applicable. Second one is Sparsh Limited of Mumbai. They import business support services from its head office located in USA. The head office has rendered such services free of cost to its branch office. Services received by Sparsh will qualify as supply even though head office has not charged anything from it. So you have to understand here that fourth one is import of services from a related person. So again, the related person, understand the definition of the related person, and we should see the fourth is also again with this combined with the second one only, like related person means who. So the import of services by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishments outside India in the course or furtherance of business. In that case also, the transaction to be treated as a supply and the GST is applicable here. So Ram is an architect in Chennai. His brother settled in London, a well-known lawyer. Ram has taken legal advice from him free of cost with regard to his family dispute. Examine whether the said activity would amount to supply under section 7. Read with schedule 1 of the CGST Act. Would your answer be different if in the above case Ram has taken advice in respect of his business unit in Chennai? So his brother is in London, it is like import of services. He is getting the advice from his brother. So in that case, we have to see whether the transaction to be treated as a supply or is not a supply. So import of services by a person from a related person. So he is his brother. So from a related person located outside India without consideration is treated as a supply. So if it is in this case, it will be treated as a supply only if it is provided in the course or furtherance of business. That is very important. See here, if it is provided in the course or furtherance of business. So we have to see whether that Ram, who is approaching his related person, his brother, for some legal advice, that legal advice he is getting for the course or furtherance of the business. So is he getting for that business purpose? No, it is regard to his family dispute. In the given case, Ram and his brothers are not related, since Ram's brother, who is not wholly or mainly dependent on Mr. Ram. So related person means what? He should be wholly dependent on him, but here in this case he is not dependent on his brother. So you can see here that they should be dependent persons. They are the members of the same family, legally recognized, directly indirectly controls others together of the same family. But there is one point that actually, even though they are brothers of the same family, they should be dependent. I think here it's not there, but tomorrow I will show you that what that dependency means. So they are from the same family only, because his brother, he is his own brother, but in this case he is not wholly dependent on him, Mr. Ram. So that's why the services provided by Ram's brother would not be treated as a supply. There is again one more point is there, but here I am not able to see that one transaction will be there, sir. I will show you that. Since Ram's brother, who is not wholly or mainly dependent on Mr. Ram, the services which is provided by Ram's brother, then that transaction is not will be treated as a supply, and the GST, if we are saying it is not treated as a supply, it's obvious that GST is not applicable. If Ram has taken the advice to his business unit, so we have seen it is like a course or furtherance of business, but still in this particular case will not be treated as a supply only, because although the same are provided, that such services have not been received from a related person. So it is not from a related person, hence it will not be treated as a supply. So I will go on to this page. That that is import of services by a person from a related person. So here what we have concluded is he is not a related person. Why he is not a related person? Because he is not wholly or mainly dependent on Mr. Ram. Since Ram's brother, who is not wholly dependent on Mr. Ram, so he is not treated as a related person. So hence the import of services will not be treated as a supply. Hence, the GST is not applicable for this particular case. So then we will see. We'll stop here till this one today, and we will try to solve some problems, because once we start with the problems only, we will be able to identify to what level we are able to understand. So I will stop here, and tomorrow we will start with our some exercise problems as well. So thank you all who are in call. Sir, you have seen GST. You have already
Thank you,
seen
ma'am.
as